The River Oaks looked calm that afternoon, wide and shining under the open sky, its surface broken only by the slow movement of distant fishing canoes. It was a kind of river people trusted, one that fed families, carried trade, and held memories older than the town itself. 15-year-old Amara Lawson stood at the riverbank, barefoot, her toes pressing into the warm mud. She had grown up beside this water. Her father used to say the river had moods, just like people, quiet when respected, deadly when underestimated. Behind her, the wooden canoe creaked softly as Margaret Lawson adjusted her wrapper and stepped inside. Margaret's movements were deliberate, controlled, the kind that gave nothing away. To anyone watching from afar, they would look like an ordinary stepmother and daughter crossing the river together. Nothing more. Amara hesitated before climbing in. "Are you coming or not?" Margaret asked, not turning around. "Yes, Ma." Amara replied quickly, forcing her feet to move. The canoe pushed off, slicing through the water. The river widened as they drifted farther from the bank, the town shrinking behind them. Amara sat at the front, holding the edge tightly. She didn't know why her chest felt heavy. Margaret had suggested this trip so gently that morning. "To remember your father," she had said, that refusing felt wrong. The word father still hurt. A flicker of memory rose uninvited. Daniel Lawson standing in the same canoe years earlier, laughing as he steadied it with one hand and held Amara with the other. "Never panic on water," he had told her. "Fear makes you sink faster than stone." The memory faded, leaving an ache behind. Margaret watched Amara's back closely, not with affection, with calculation. There had been signs long before this day, small things Amara hadn't understood at the time. Margaret's silence whenever Daniel praised his daughter. The tight smile whenever neighbors said Amara looked just like her father. The way Margaret's eyes hardened whenever Daniel spoke about what belongs to my child. Back then, Amara thought it was nothing. She believed effort could fix everything. After Daniel's death, the house had changed. The walls felt colder, Margaret's voice sharper, meals quieter, and always, that sense that something invisible was closing in. The canoe drifted deeper into the river. Margaret stood. The sudden shift made the canoe wobble. Amara turned halfway. "Ma!" Margaret's face was calm. Too calm. There was no anger there. No shouting. Just certainty. "This ends today," Margaret said softly. Two hands shoved Amara forward. The world tilted. The sky vanished, and the river rushed up to claim her. The Lawson house had once been warm, not because it was large or beautiful. It wasn't, but because Daniel Lawson filled it with something steady and reassuring. His laughter carried to the compound in the evenings. His voice anchored the mornings. And at the center of it all was Amara, the child he adored without apology. Margaret noticed that from the very beginning. The first week after the wedding, Daniel had returned from the market carrying oranges and groundnuts. He handed the larger share to Amara without thinking. Margaret had laughed then lightly, but something sharp lodged in her chest. A man who already gave his heart away, she had thought. At first, Margaret tried to be patient. She cooked. She cleaned. She played the role expected of her. But each day confirmed what she feared. She was a guest in a house that already belonged to someone else. Daniel consulted Amara about decisions, small ones but meaningful. Which tenant to trust, which path the canoe should take, which land to lease. Margaret watched it all in silence. Foreshadowing came quietly. One evening, while Daniel slept, Margaret stood alone in the sitting room, touching the framed land documents on the wall. Amara had been the one to dust them earlier that day. "This is yours," Daniel had told his daughter proudly. One day, the words burned. Then Daniel died. The house didn't mourn the same way twice. Amara cried openly, collapsing into neighbors' arms, clinging to the doorway as if her father might still walk through it. Margaret cried loudly, but when the house was quiet, she stopped too quickly. At the funeral, Amara noticed something strange. Margaret wasn't looking at the coffin. She was watching Uncle Peter whisper to a man in a dark suit, the lawyer. The first real crack came weeks later. Amara was returning from the backyard when she heard voices through the half-open bedroom door. Margaret's voice, tight, shaking. "You mean I don't inherit everything?" The lawyer answered carefully. "Your husband placed the assets in a trust for his daughter. You're only managing them until she comes of age." Silence. Then something cold settled into Margaret's tone. "And if something happens to the girl?" The lawyer cleared his throat. "Then the trust dissolves." Amara stepped back, heart racing. Medium reveal fully earned. From that day, the house became hostile territory. Margaret stopped pretending. Food arrived late, or not at all. School fees became a burden. Amara was reminded daily that she was lucky to be allowed to stay. But Margaret made another quiet mistake. She underestimated Daniel's foresight. Daniel tying a thin cord around Amara's neck, a small fish-shaped pendant resting against her chest. "This connects you to people who will protect you," he'd said. "Promise me you'll never remove it." Back in the present, Margaret noticed the pendant one night. Her eyes narrowed. She didn't ask about it. She simply began planning. Because to Margaret, survival had always belonged to those willing to erase obstacles completely. And Amara, gentle, grieving, obedient, looked easy to erase. Margaret Lawson had learned early in life that desperation did not announce itself loudly. It whispered. It sat quietly in the chest, tightening a little more each day until action felt inevitable. Flashback. Margaret as a girl, standing barefoot outside her uncle's house, listening as he told her mother, "We can't keep another mouth to feed." No one argued for her. No one fought. That lesson stayed with her. No one saves you unless you save yourself. Now, years later, she sat alone in the Lawson living room, the same framed documents hanging on the wall. The house was quiet. Too quiet. Amara was at school. Time, at last, to think. The trustees were coming. Uncle Peter had called the night before. "They want to review everything," he said. Daniel left instructions. Margaret's fingers tightened around the phone. When? Soon. Soon meant questions. Soon meant scrutiny. Soon meant exposure. She walked to the house slowly, touching the furniture, the walls, the doorway where she had once imagined children of her own playing. Every object now felt temporary. Amara returned that afternoon to find Margaret unusually kind. "Sit," Margaret said, pushing food toward her. Amara blinked, surprised. That kindness was a mask, foreshadowing layered carefully. Margaret asked questions, gentle ones. Did Amara still remember how to swim? Did she still like the river? Did she miss her father there? Amara answered honestly. Unaware, each answer tightened the plan. Yes, yes, yes. That night, Margaret overheard another phone call. Uncle Peter again. "The trustees are especially interested in the river rights," he said. "They'll want to talk to the girl." That was the moment the decision hardened. Because as long as Amara breathed, Margaret owned nothing. The next morning, Margaret suggested the river trip. "Your father loved the water," she said softly. "We should go. Just us." Amara hesitated. Something in Margaret's voice felt wrong. Too smooth, too rehearsed. But years of conditioning spoke louder than instinct. Peace is worth sacrifice. She agreed. Meanwhile, the pendant lay hidden beneath Amara's shirt. Margaret noticed it again as they prepared to leave. A flicker of irritation crossed her face. She turned away. One final flashback surfaced. Daniel's voice, distant but firm. "If anything happens, they'll know where to find you." Margaret didn't know who they were. She didn't care. She believed the river would erase everything. Bodies, secrets, and mistakes. As the canoe pushed off that morning, Margaret sat silently, feeling something close to relief. The plan was simple, clean, permanent, and like most people who believe they've outsmarted fate, Margaret failed to understand one thing. The river did not belong to her. The canoe slid farther from shore, the town dissolving into a blur of rooftops and palm trees behind them. The river ocean widened here, stretching like an open mouth, calm on the surface but heavy with unseen current beneath. Fishermen dotted the distance, close enough to be seen, far enough to be useless. Amara sat at the front, her hands wrapped tightly around the canoe's edge. The wood was warm from the sun, rough against her palms. She tried to focus on the water's rhythm, the way her father had taught her. Breathe, balance, trust the river, but never forget what it can do. Behind her, Margaret remained silent, too silent. Amara glanced back once. Margaret's eyes weren't on the river or the horizon. They were fixed on Amara's shoulders, her spine, the narrow space between her and the water. The look was unsettling, not angry, not frantic, but resolved. A memory stirred. Flashback. Daniel pausing mid-row years ago, scanning the same stretch of river. "This part looks peaceful," he'd said, lowering his voice, "but it's deeper than it seems. People think still water means safe water. That's how they disappear." The canoe rocked suddenly. Amara gasped. "Ma, I'm just adjusting," Margaret replied, already standing. The movement shifted the canoe again, harder this time. Water lapped against the sides. Amara's heart began to race. "Please sit," Amara said, forcing calm into her voice. "It's not steady here." Margaret didn't sit. She stepped closer. The air felt tighter, thicker, as if the river itself were holding its breath. Another flash of memory cut through Amara's fear. Flashback. The night Daniel died, Uncle Peter holding her shoulders. "Your father prepared for everything," he'd whispered. Everything. At the time, those words had meant nothing. Now they echoed. Amara's fingers brushed the pendant beneath her shirt, without thinking. The small fish pressed against her skin, grounding her. A habit her father had taught her. Touch it when afraid. Margaret noticed the movement. "What's that?" she asked. "Nothing," Amara said quickly. Margaret's mouth tightened. The canoe drifted to the deepest part of the river, the water darkening beneath them. The current tugged gently, insistently, like a hand pulling at the canoe's belly. Margaret inhaled slowly. Years of resentment, hunger, and fear compressed into a single moment. She thought of the lawyer's words, the trustees, the house slipping from her grasp. She thought of herself as a girl, turned away from doors that closed forever. She would not be turned away again. "This ends today," she said. Amara turned just as Margaret's hands reached out. Time fractured. The sky tilted. The canoe lurched violently. Amara screamed toward to the open air as her feet lost purchase, her body pitching forward. The river rose to meet her. Cold swallowed Amara whole. The river closed over her head in a violent rush, silencing her scream, stealing her breath. Water filled her ears, her mouth, her nose. For one terrifying second, panic clawed at her chest, wild and uncontrollable. Then her father's voice cut through the chaos. Flashback, sharp, instinctive. "Fear makes you sink faster than stone." Amara forced herself to stop thrashing. Her body remembered before her mind did. She kicked. The current dragged her downward, spinning her once, twice. But she fought it, angling her body the way Daniel had taught her, letting the water carry her instead of fighting it head-on. Her lungs burned. Her arms ached. Above the surface, the canoe steadied. Margaret leaned over the edge, heart pounding, not with guilt, but with urgency. She scanned the water, searching for movement. Nothing. No bubbles. No hand. No sound. Relief crashed through her. "It's done," she whispered. She sat back down, breathing hard, her hands shaking now that the act was complete. The river smoothed itself out quickly, swallowing evidence as if nothing had happened at all. Margaret wiped her palms on her wrapper. No body, no witnesses, just water. She turned the canoe toward shore. Then, a splash. Margaret froze. Another splash, closer this time. Her head snapped around. A hand broke the surface of the water, small, trembling, unmistakably alive. "No!" Margaret breathed. Amara's head emerged next. Her hair slicked to her face, eyes wide but burning with determination. She gasped for air, coughing violently, clinging to the will to stay afloat. Margaret's relief curdled into terror. "How?" she whispered, because she hadn't known. She hadn't known Daniel had taught the girl to survive this river. She hadn't known the current bent downstream, toward fishermen. She hadn't known the river didn't kill quickly. It tested first. Amara didn't swim toward the canoe. She let the current take her. That choice saved her. The river carried her away from Margaret's reach, pulling her toward the cluster of distant canoes Margaret had dismissed as too far to matter. Amara's strength faltered. Her limbs fell heavy. Darkness crept at the edges of her vision. Her fingers closed around a pendant instinctively. The fish-shaped charm flashed briefly in the sunlight as she struggled to stay above water. Downstream, a fisherman named Samuel Adeyemi squinted at the glint. "Do you see that?" he asked his brother. Another fisherman shaded his eyes. "That's Daniel Lawson's mark," he said slowly. They dropped their nets. The river delivered Amara into their arms moments later, her body limp, her breath shallow, but present, alive. Upstream, Margaret watched the empty water in disbelief. The river had not obeyed her, and in that moment, she understood the truth too late. She had pushed the girl into the river, believing it was the end. She was wrong. Amara woke to the sound of voices layered over one another, low, urgent, unfamiliar. Her body felt heavy, wrapped in pain and exhaustion. When she tried to move, a sharp ache bloomed in her chest, forcing a shallow gasp from her lips. "She's breathing," someone said. "Easy now," another voice urged. Her eyes fluttered open. Above her was a canopy of rough cloth stretched between wooden poles. Sunlight filtered through in thin strips. She lay in the bottom of a fisherman's canoe, her clothes soaked, her skin cold despite the heat. Samuel Adeyemi crouched beside her, relief softening his weathered face. "You're safe," he said gently. "The river didn't take you." The words barely made sense, but the tone did. Safe. As strength slowly returned, memory crashed back into her. Margaret's hands, the tilt of the canoe, the cold grip of water. Amara's breath hitched. Samuel noticed. "Don't speak yet," he said. "Just listen." They took her straight to Uncle Peter. The moment Peter saw the pendant at her neck, his face drained of color. "This is Daniel's safeguard," he said quietly, turning to the men beside him. "He told us if anything ever happened, this meant it was time." Full backstory payoff. Step 5 complete. Daniel had known. He had watched Margaret's growing resentment. He had seen the way her eyes followed documents, not people. And though he loved peace, he loved his daughter more. The pendant marked Amara as a protected heir. The fishermen were part of a quiet network Daniel had built along the river. People who knew what that symbol meant. Margaret was arrested before nightfall. She didn't resist. Shock hollowed her out as the truth unraveled faster than she could contain it. Witnesses came forward. The lawyer spoke. The attempted murder could not be buried by water. In court, Margaret said nothing when the judge asked if she had anything to add. She had already lost the house, the land, the future she thought she could steal. Months later, Amara returned to the river. She stood where the canoe had tipped, the water calm again, innocent looking. She no longer feared it, but she respected it deeply. Uncle Peter stood beside her. "Your father will be proud," he said. Amara nodded, touching the pendant one last time. "I know," she whispered. She removed it and held it up, watching it catch the light, remembering Daniel's smile, his laughter, his steady hands guiding her through the current. Then she released it. The pendant disappeared beneath the surface, swallowed gently, not violently. The river accepted it. As Amara turned away, stronger than before, she understood something Margaret never had. Some endings don't destroy you. They reveal who was meant to survive. And the river, wide, patient, eternal, flowed on, carrying the truth forward, unable to be silenced.